Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the upcoming discussion panel. The participants include Ryan Honey from Buck, Will MacNeil from The Mill, Roger Whittlesea from the amazing Proud Creative Studio, Jonas Otto from Field, and our very own Vít Zemčík.
But we'll be talking a lot about influencing each other, different fields, collaboration and teamwork and stuff like that. And just to set ourselves in some kind of a mood for that, I've prepared a short video, which I'm gonna play now.
Team. And do it as a team. Remember, you're a team, and if you can't act as a team, you're fired too. I even love saying the word team. You probably think that's a picture of my family. It's the A-team.
Yeah, so it's quite obvious that motion design is like really a lot about collaborating and big teams to make a successful big piece, even though sometimes you get a solo piece. But I wanted to start with something just kind of briefly introduction. What was your path to where are you now? Because I think that everybody has some background, and it's kind of influential on what you're doing. Danny Allen, the first edition of Mouvo, said he had like almost 40 jobs during his life just to figure out what he is not good at and he doesn't want to do. So just wanted to ask if what are your backgrounds and how they led to where are you now? You can start with Will and then go through.
Okay. Well, I'm currently a design director at the Mill in London, and I took a pretty strange path to get there. I was a English literature major in a college in the US when I suddenly decided I didn't want to have anything to do with literature. So I started working in editing. I then thought I wanted to work in film editing. So instead of moving to LA, I moved to London. And got a great gig doing some assistant film editing on some big films, feature films. Then I got into, sort of dragged into editing TV documentaries. And one day I found myself in a cutting room editing a documentary called Celebrity Disfigured. And I said, I got to get the hell out of here. And so I very quickly traded all my editing time and expertise for learning animation. And I traded my editing clients for animation clients. I basically said, I'm not going to edit for you anymore, I'm going to do animation for your documentaries instead. And I spent about a month or two in my shed, my garden, teaching myself to do 3D animation. And then I set out on my own and did that for a while. Eventually just decided I wanted to work with bigger companies and learn more. So since then I've worked with studios like Jellyfish Pictures, MPC, and now The Mill.
Okay, that's very nice. Okay, Ryan?
So my name is Ryan Honey. I'm the executive creative director of Buck in Los Angeles. I have a degree in economics, which is very useful. I did that, and then I moved to London and was a bartender for a little bit. And I also got sick of that for various reasons. And I decided to go to school in Vancouver. I went to the Vancouver Film School for this 10-month multimedia program, because I was into computers and programming on the side and stuff. And so I became kind of a web designer, I guess. And then I moved to New York. Some friends introduced me to these guys. they had this company called Compound Heavy Industries. We we started making cartoons together for the internet, and then we started this company called Heavy.com, which was one of the first kind of broadband entertainment companies in the world. And I hired every person I'd ever known, and so we grew to like 150 people, and we raised all this money, and it was crazy, and it was probably 3 years of total madness, and then the internet bust, and we had nothing, and we had to fire everyone. and then someone was like, well, because I had been designing the website and directing the cartoons and directing the live action, and someone said, why don't you start making commercials? And so I got a rep and started to make commercials, and then started a little design animation studio within Heavy. But we were still trying to fund the broadband entertainment site with my partners, and that got annoying, and so then I left and started Buck in 2003.
Hello, I'm Roger Whittlesea from Proud Creative. Yeah, my first job was a milkman, actually, delivering milk, but that didn't lead me here, I don't think. I started I think my first creative role or job in a creative company was as a runner in a commercials production company, and then started working as a director's assistant, and was around a lot of big TV commercials, seeing how they got made. I spent 5 or 6 years working in commercials before making the kind of move over to design and branding. Proud has been going for 12 years, so yeah, I guess that's... Well, we were talking earlier about, and I think we're going to talk some more about collaboration, and I think actually some of the lessons I learned in the commercial world and building kind of teams of 30 or 40 to work on set, and everybody having these kind of codified roles where everyone knows what they're expected to do is an interesting kind of way into that collaborative way of working. And now at Proud, what I've got is the ability to work collaboratively in totally different ways, and that's what, for me, is exciting about running Proud.
So hey, I'm Jonas. I'm a creative technologist working in the London-based studio field, and I guess my path is quite short, maybe. So I tried 2 things. When I wanted to study, I applied for biology, marine biology, and at a University of the Arts in Bremen in Germany. And I kind of got into the latter one, and then I started studying digital media there. And once I was done with my bachelor, I figured out, now I finally feel like I know the space, I know all the facilities that I can use, all the workshops. I don't want to leave now. And so I started my master there as well. And while I was doing my master, I started working a little bit as a freelancer, the stuff that you need to pay your rent, do a little bit of web design. But I got more and more interested into doing installations and physical stuff. So those of you who've seen our talk yesterday have seen some of the stuff. Yeah, I got into some projects where you need to program motors and physical installations, this kind of stuff. And I got more and more interested in that, and this is how I got a freelance job with Field. And they basically liked what I did, and they asked me to stay for the next project, and then they asked me to stay for the next project, and then they asked me, why don't you just stay forever, or as long as you like? And that's basically all the story. So since then, that's been 2.5 years ago, and since then I've been living in London working for Field.
Okay, cool, thank you very much. I'd like to ask, as motion design is such a versatile visual language and involves many different disciplines and different fields, what's the magic, and how can you bring the magic to make a successful team or a successful project collaboration when you need it? What's the crucial thing when you when you do that, when you assemble a team? Yeah, we can go like that, or if you want to.
It's a tricky question. I think the essence of motion graphics is it's always been collaborative, and it's always involved people with a big range of skills. That skill set's changing and expanding constantly, but it's always been about embracing the fact that you're bringing people from lots of different design or even technological backgrounds into your projects. So, when I started out doing motion graphics, it was involving a lot of live action. So you're talking about working with people who shoot and people who understand what happens on a set, but then somehow learning to integrate that into visual effects and to do, your animation on top of that. Nowadays, the kind of names or the credits you see on a motion design project range from, traditional cell animators all the way through creative coders, creative technologists, 3D animators, 2D animators. And it's just about making sure that you get the best out of all the different skills that are there and embrace them. And I was doing the project I was working on this past week, just before I came here, involved everything from 2D animators to WebGL coders. And if you sit around the table with these people and say, I want to hear what you guys have to bring to this, and in many cases, as much hard as you try, you can't really understand what all of them know and what all of them, the challenges that they're facing with their individual part of the project. But if you get excited about what they're bringing to the project and do your best to understand the challenges that they're facing, you'll find you really get the best out of people and you create something that is far beyond what you could do in a small team with a limited skill set.
Cool. Ryan?
Well, that was well said. Yeah, no, I mean, every project is different, and for us, I feel like we take great care to assemble people from around the world and have them at our disposal. So when a project comes in, it's not like you're scrambling to see who's available and freelancers here and there. You've got this sort of, we call it the buck massive, and it is just so many amazing people to choose from. And you bring them in to discuss and figure out what the best approach is. If it's a creative approach and then the execution, and like you said, I mean, you listen to every person, what they bring to the table. If someone's an effects artist and says, you could do this in Cell, or I could do it in Houdini, and then you guys could, render it like this, or whatever. It's going to be way faster and cheaper, and we can make it look cooler. Those kind of conversations, I think, is what makes this field super exciting, and what also creates the most interesting and unique work.
Yeah, our model is kind of the opposite, really, of Bucks, which is we don't have a proud massive. We've always been small, deliberately so. Kind of 5 or 6 is probably as big as we ever got in that 12 years. So we're small at the core, concentrating on brand. And then we look for collaborative partners. And I think the key to making those relationships work, for me anyway, is to start with kind of mutual respect and love and excitement about the work that the people you choose to work with. Because I think that the end goal is to get to a position of trust so that you can all work together. But I was trying to think, trying to shortcut to trust. You can't get there without respect, I think. So for us, it's choosing people that we're just, we really love their work first, and then we try and work out how we're going to get on with them in a work setting. But if we don't love what they do, and if they don't love the ideas or the project that we're bringing together, I don't think it's ever going to work.
I guess for us, as also kind of like a small core team, I guess it's similar to your process. We try to be like, from our core team, to be a bit more generalized. So we are not really specialists in one specific field. So what we always do is we sit down and discuss all the, a brief or like an idea, a concept, and then it's, for example, my job in the discussion often is to figure out if it needs some heavy technical input, and if it is something that I can do, or if I figure out, okay, we need something somebody to get in to do a little bit more specialized jobs. So for example, if we're talking about some real-time installation, is it something that I can do with my skills, or is it going to be beyond what I know right now? Does it make sense to get somebody in to collaborate with us? And in every case, we always have two lists from people to choose from. So we have a list of people we already worked with and that we know well and we like them as people and we know we get along well, we know what they can do, how they work and their style. And then we always have this other list of like really, really interesting people that because of their work, we're interested to work with. And then from time to time, we invite them to work with us on projects if we feel they are the right person to collaborate in this project. And yeah, some of them make it to the other list. So they then come over and over again, and then they become part of like the bigger team. So sometimes it feels like, we're about 8 to 10 people in the studio, but it feels a bit more like we're maybe like 25 people, but most of them just are off most of the time. They just have really long holidays.
Okay, cool. Ryan, I wanted to ask, like, how big is back? Actually, it's like 80 people or two.
No, like
200
people, yeah.
Like in all three places together.
Across all three offices, yeah. I mean, that's full time, and then freelancers and stuff, we run like 250 to 3.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And like, if you can say, kind of an average team in the beginning of a project, how many people do you put on?
I mean, it depends on the project entirely, and the way that it comes in, because sometimes clients come with a very open brief and they want us to pitch against 5 studios, and they're like, we've got this script, we don't know what style we want, and that's when we bring in like 6 teams. I'm giving away some
Keep going.
Cool.
6 teams from around the world, and we do like 6 styles and try to basically blow everyone else out of the water by just having as many fully fleshed out pitches as possible for them to choose from. Because these days, it's not these days when you pitch projects to agencies, it's not the agency that usually decides, it's the client, and it's the shiniest object on the table, if that makes sense.
All right.
So, how much of your work is through agency and how much direct to client?
A lot less than it used to be. In LA, I would say only like 10 or 15% is agency, but in New York and Sydney, probably more like 75.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, the dynamic of working through an ad agency versus direct to client is the game changer, I think.
I would agree.
Just as you mentioned the teams, I want to also ask what Jonas said about being generalist. Like, do you guys at Buck are rather generalists, and then if you need somebody who's really special, then you pick him and add him to a team, or do you like put specialists in their fields like illustrators or like cell animators, 3D artists already in the beginning to make like a versatile team?
So we have some long-term clients that we do like very specific things for all the time, and so a lot of that is like illustration work and 2D animation. So we have some people that are specialists that just do that, but people generally, I would say 90% of our staff, everyone has a multitude of skills, and that's what we look for in artists is people that can do, they can tons of styles, they can jump from 3D to illustration, they can do storyboards, because we're a very sort of amorphous company, and we do tons of different styles and projects, and we need to be able to just like pull people from one job to the next and over here and okay, now you're doing this, and I mean generally a project for us, you'll see the credit list be like 40 or 50 people. Well, it's because people jump from job to job, and they come on for 2 weeks, do something, they come off, they do a shot, or they pitch in, etc. So yes, I guess the point is that people with lots of different talents are the people that we hire most.
Okay. I want to ask Roger, how can your clients, when you do branding or a strategy for your clients, how big is the influence from their field, what they're doing, like, like outside of the creative fields, like how much this influence your work?
Yeah, a lot, I would say. It does depend on how the client comes to you, how long-term that relationship is, and how close and how deep it gets, and how quickly that happens. Sometimes they come with a brief, and you might want to challenge that quite fundamentally, and that's always interesting. I guess the opportunities to do the really great work tend to be where the client has bought into you really early and trusted you and listened to you. And I think getting to that position means listening to them, I suppose, and really understanding what they're asking of you. Just remind me of the question. I feel like
if the industry of the client, like can be really influential on the design work.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the client's world is the inspiration for everything we do. Otherwise, what you're doing is wrong, I suppose. So for us, I think, on different levels for different clients, that's the case, which is their world has to become your world for the time you're working with them. Their problems should become your problems if the relationship is a good one. Certainly the way we work anyway, which is to try and get to the nub of what's the business challenge, what you're trying to do here. And sometimes that might mean saying, well, are you sure you want to do that? Is that even the right medium? And I think from our small model, we're able to make that challenge without jeopardizing a project, because we haven't got the team waiting to be the motion designers, and we haven't got a big machine to feed that is data analysis or whatever. We're about ideas and brand and helping them to figure out what they should be doing at a top level, and then we think about how to structure that, and then about what the team might look like that's best going to deliver that, I suppose. And the clients that we've had the best relationships really enjoy that process and have entrusted us with being able to do that for them.
Could I just jump in there?
Yeah.
One thing that we've noticed in the last few years in particular is that our sort of bread and butter work, which is the big expensive 30-second, 60-second TV commercial, is becoming is going away. It's Netflix, Amazon, other on-demand services are kind of killing the big expensive TV ad. So aside from the big Super Bowl ads we might make, or some other Christmas ads, that stuff, clients are coming to us asking for different ways to present their brands, and it's not necessarily on TV anymore. And this gives us a pretty cool opportunity, because it means that they don't necessarily know how they want to present their work. So they might come and just say something as simple as, we've invented this new thing and we need you to explain to people how it works. We had a cosmetics company called Lush come to us and say, we've come up with this new spa treatment. We need to convey to people what it feels like to have it. And at that point, we didn't know whether we were going to make a film or an installation or some sort of VR experience or an app. And in the end, we've made versions of almost everything of that, because we came back to them with an idea, and then we explained to them how we were going to take that idea and use it in lots of different ways. So what we're seeing is we can use our expertise in technology and visual effects and say to clients, you may have your product and you have your idea of how you want to market it, but we have all the expertise on what kind of things we can make from that.
Okay, so it's quite important to be ready to deliver for whatever medium might be appropriate for the communication.
I think so. I think that Field and Proud and Found as well are all showing that there's all kinds of ways that you can present a brand, and we're coming into that game as well, because we see that it's where the future is.
All right. All right. Do you guys any of you can add to that?
I basically can only agree what Will said. Like, what is really interesting is that we recently have had more conversations with clients or brands that directly come to us instead of receiving a brief or a pitch from an agency, and that really allowed us to, work with them from the beginning, have a conversation about what they really want and what they want to show, and by that we can shape the brief on our own, basically, and like work on the stuff that we would like to work on and like to work in the way that we like to work. And I think this is much more interesting and much more fun than just trying to make this pitch work with whatever they give us. So I guess that's a really interesting development in the recent years.
Cool. Okay, I wanted to ask Ryan, as Buck is really big, and what sometimes it feels to me that I can spot your work across many portfolios, and how when you have like these huge collaborations and pieces that which are made by big teams with many players in it, how can or who can claim the ownership of the thing, or like is there any ownership at all?
Yeah, so we generally don't call out a director. Well, I mean, we don't. We always say it's directed by Buck because Buck is a massive team of people, and like I said, we bounce around, and creative directors will one day be directing a team of people, and one day they'll be making frames for another creative director because they have some downtime, and it is more of a it's always a collaborative approach to everything, and I think we took many years ago decided to take the ego out of the equation entirely, and we never say like this person, this was directed by so and so, and I think it has served us very well, especially in this new landscape where before we kept on getting crap from agencies saying like who's the director, who's the person in charge of this, and now when you're partnering with brands, they don't care who the director is. They want they just want good work, and they want it to be done in the time that they want it, and they want it, they want to have conversations. They want to be part of the team. They don't want to be told what you're doing, what to do by one person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. That kind of, how do you foster that collaborative relationship so the client does feel like they're becoming part of that process? I think, although I think when you set this up as a kind of theme, you were thinking more about interdisciplinary collaboration bringing different skills in. But actually, I think there's a whole conversation about, there are creative people on the client side, and they know their business. How do you kind of make them feel a part of the process in a collaborative way? I think it's something we work on a lot.
Yeah, for us, it was a happy accident. And that's actually how we got so big, is because not many places like us did this. They didn't have the sort of just one name, and there was only a few shops, and most of them are gone. And so working directly with brands is more natural for us, and having that, them come to the office, and there are 5 people come in, and we sit down and have what we call brain jams, and everyone brain jams together. and it's like we say, it's like we're having a party, you're invited to our party, let's have some fun. And that is kind of our approach to our clients. Like this isn't a pain in the ass. It's not something that is tough, but this should be enjoyable to come work with us and figure this out.
I have kind of like practical question. When I read the book from Walter Isaacson about innovators, there was an entire chapter dedicated to on-place collaboration, and that he said that at many places like Bell Laboratories or Intel or Pixar, it was their core philosophy that they've put people from different fields, engineers or even economists or whatever, they try to put them as close as possible, and to arrange like random meetings. So they even like organized where the toilets are in the building, so they could meet randomly and to discuss stuff just randomly. And that they say that that's the magic of like at the moment speaking about different things between different fields. Is this really crucial, and or has it changed, somehow? Like with, you've mentioned that your creative directorate field is in Berlin now, and you're collaborating over Skype.
Our managing director.
Oh, managing director. Okay. So how is this crucial? This collaboration and on the spot? And I think we can go like this again, just to.
So, are you asking? Is it about who you work with directly, or whether you work with them remotely, or is it just about how you mix up the teams?
Yeah. Or both.
Oh, okay.
Or we mix them like teammates.
We don't we don't do much remote work. We have a few people who work with us remotely, but mainly it's in-house. We do collaborate between our different studios around the world, but actually occasionally find that a bit tricky. What we have done is we moved office a few years ago, and when we did that, we decided to get rid of the idea that design would be here, 3D would be here, engineering would be here. And we've broken that up a little bit more, and instead we've created project rooms. So the old model was you'd have a visual effects suite where there'd be one person operating a flame, and all the different people would be kind of subservient to that. We've broken that up, and we just create rooms now that can be used in any way, and any computers can be put in there. And at the same time, we've said, you can be a 3D artist, and you can find yourself sitting next to a 2D concept artist, or a designer, or an effects artist, or anything like that. And by and large, that works really well, because you just get different people looking over your shoulder and commenting on what you're doing, and presenting different ways to do it. So that's all worked really well. There has been a bit of a rebellion, though, and actually we're considering consolidating some of the departments into little kind of niche areas, just so that we can kind of get their identity back a little bit.
Is that the CG department? Are they?
It's actually, I think it's the design department that I'm involved with. We want more like beanbag chairs.
Oh, I see. I mean, for us, I mean, the mill is definitely bigger than we are in each office, and they have, I think, more disciplines in a way. I mean, our CG department in LA is like, I don't know, 25 people or so, and I think, well, to answer your question, we don't try to encourage people to like mingle in that way in the office, but we do focus on company culture a lot, and try to have parties and events, and like everyone's going bowling, or like we a year ago we rented out a camp in northern New York, like a kids camp, and we for 3 days flew everyone in, and they just drank and acted like idiots for 3 days, and that's sort of our approach to that, is creating just a friend culture, even across all offices, and that leads to conversations and a lot of collaboration, because once you go back to your desk and you've got your Slack open, it's like these people and they're asking you questions, etc. I think that's the way people prefer to talk now anyway, is like this. Anyway.
I'm going to go back to the first part of the question, which was about, I suppose, those creative intersections of different disciplines. And for me, that it is at the intersection that interesting stuff starts to happen. And I suppose our job is, at the core, is to keep an eye on those intersections and work out how they're going to be interesting for a project or a client, and keep them moving in the right direction and creating the right sort of things. But it's that friction of people coming in and they don't know the client, so we can selectively, we can bring them on board selectively and expose them to what they need to know, not the stuff they don't, which I think is a kind of interesting part of our role in that. And then using them for what they are expert and brilliant at, but trying to shape that in a way that is appropriate to a particular client need or project need. I suppose that's what I enjoy about my role, is that it is often at that intersection, whether of collaborator and us, or us and client. And as to whether they're in the room or remote, it's often both for us. But there are times when I just feel it's absolutely essential to all be in a room, and there's some stuff I think you really struggle to do without getting face to face. It can just take ages to do something remotely that would otherwise be just like you just point, and it's like, that would have taken 3 hours on email. I had it the other day where somebody spent an hour drawing me a diagram, which would have just been just moving his hands and, if we'd been together. So, there are definitely times when, get everyone in a room, or get the people that need to be in a room together. Sometimes Skype doesn't cut it.
How does it work at Field?
Yeah, so coming back to the open office and remote working, so we always try, when we have freelancers from abroad, to get them over for at least a few weeks, that you can work with them together, at least for the kickoff of the project. And we always felt like that was like a really nice way to work with. So we have in general this like really, really open space office where everybody's sitting together, and as Will said, like you can look over each other's shoulders, you can talk about things and figure out like what each other is doing, and can easily learn from each other. And this open office idea, even it goes basically beyond that. So we always have like a little bit more space in the studio. So what we're doing right now, we have another like a smaller company of people we know, and they do a lot of like VR and augmented reality. They kind of sit in the back. It's really nice to have them. So we have lunch conversations with them, and they work in a little bit of a different field than we do, but they are also in the creative industry. So it's really interesting to get this input. And so, for example, during the last year, while he was living in London, we had Bradley G. Monk. Bradley G. Monkowitz, he was working in our studio, so he had a desk with us, and so that was also really nice to have somebody else like him in the studio. And sometimes we keep like friends that we know who work in the industry, but sometimes they just work on their own projects. And if we have the space, we also offer them to like, hey, why don't you come around and work in the office for a day or two? And sometimes you just figure out they are on to really interesting stuff, and this also starts conversations, and you figure out they just acquired a new skill which is really useful for your current project, and then you maybe hire them. And so we figured out this kind of is like a really, really nice culture of finding friends to work with.
That's cool. I wanted to bring in one quote by Ed Catmull, the Pixar president and founder. And he basically says that the most creative people are willing to work in the shadow of uncertainty. So you always have a part of what you really know and what you're really good at, and then one side where you really explore something you've never done before, or you don't know anything about that, and that's what brings the magic of like the creativity or something for the project. Like, do you have anything to that, or?
Well, I think that's what I love about doing motion design, is that you're always doing that, because you're always experimenting in this world of unknowns. If you compare what you're doing in a sort of motion design piece maybe to a CG car ad, where pretty much all the parameters are known when you start, and you know if you're going to be able to do what it is, and you know exactly what team to have and how long it's probably going to take. If you start a motion design project, particularly an abstract one, you have no idea what's going to happen along the way, whether some of the design ideas are going to work or not, whether the client's going to throw them away simply because they don't like them. So you're always working in this kind of in a pretty risky way, because you could at any point turn around and realize that something you've done is going to be thrown away or discarded. So that's kind of the thrill of doing this sort of stuff. Is it's always an experiment, and you always have one foot in the shadows.
I like Hunter S. Thompson's quote on this, which is, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much room.
Yeah, I can't beat that.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty good, pretty on point. I guess it would be really, really boring if you just always do what you already know how to do. And so, yeah, it's really good to just maybe imagine something before you figure out how to do it.
All right. Does anybody in the audience have a question for the discussion? There's one. Can I, because we have only 4 at the moment. There was one. Let's go.
Thanks. So we've talked a lot about collaboration in terms of getting teams together for projects and for clients, etc. I was just wondering if you could give some insight in collaboration from an R&D perspective, and getting together for experimentation and just play and just making some cool shit, and how you take that and then bring it into client work as well.
Is it for all the guys? Or
for all, yeah.
For all.
All of it? Okay. Well, I'll start. As artists in this field, everyone wants to push themselves all the time and discover new things. I think that's just in our nature, and the way that we approach that is that if you have downtime, just put your code to R&D and go do whatever you want. And then if you discover something cool or make something that is interesting, then let's have a meeting about it and show it to everyone. And then that, if it may get incorporated into a project at some point. But the creative technologists and even the CG animators, they're always, a lot of people are trying new things out and sharing them with the group as a whole, and company-wide even.
Yeah, that's basically how it works for us as well. But it can also sometimes work the other way around. So that you basically work on a client project, and then during this project you come up with like a really cool and interesting technique or some kind of look that you then are so interested in that you decide, okay, this is not the only thing we want to do with it. We want to bring this further. And sometimes that means you kind of take it over to a next client project, but sometimes it also means that you just do your own research with it and develop it further, and there's like a really cool self-commissioned project coming out of it. And sometimes it just like runs to nowhere, and it is just lying on your desk, but maybe you will pick it up again in like a few months' time.
Right. Anybody have another question? All right. Then I have one last video to wrap this up, because we didn't have G-Monk last year in the discussion, so I wanted to bring him to this discussion, and just a short.
For me, I just never want to do the same thing. I always want to add something new to it every time. Incredibly hard to start over, but it's actually the most inspiring thing is being a beginner at something. Like to get really, really competent at something and then say, scrap it, I'm starting over, and then you start over, and until you get really competent at that new thing, then you scrap that and start over, and you kind of, but then the knowledge is always there. You can always go back on, what you've learned in the past, and so it just makes you a better artist and a more versatile artist, and much more. I live for diversity. I don't necessarily want to spend 20 years mastering one thing. I would rather spend 20 years mastering 10 things. Never to the fullest degree, but I'd rather just be more inspired and feel more, it's more satisfying in a lot of ways to make yourself uncomfortable and conquer those situations. Strive to constantly reinvent yourself. And I think, from what I was talking about doing Tron, to Oblivion, to collaboration, to all the different things, I think that's the one thing that I need to do to stay inspired. I just did motion graphics or just UI work, I would lose that sense of burning desire. I would lose that sense of excitement, if I just did the same thing. So for me, through collaboration, I've made uncomfortable constantly. And here's a weird psychological bit.
So that was Bradley in the discussion. And before I wrap this up, I just wanted to tell you a few practical notes. Again, look inside your bags because you can win some nice stuff. HBO Go subscription, a vacuum tablet. Each of you, every purchase ticket will be in the draw. And then if you fill out the questionnaire you have in your bag and you put it in the box, you can win even Adobe Creative Club subscription, which is really cool. And then we have also an interactive game you can play with this year's identity, and you can have your own unique poster made thanks to Copy General, our printing partner. And also we have the Mouvo machine, which is kind of like a message board for this event at machine.mouvo.cz. So have a look there, buy some merch of the festival. We would be really happy if you do so. And then I think that's about it. So thank you all for the discussion panel. It was really nice to have you.
Thank you.